Hello, welcome to another edition of Sports Check here on Ghana Web TV. My name is Daniel Odro. Today, I've got another interesting guest, someone who at the peak of his administrative career was described as one of the most powerful men in Ghana football. He was a critical member of the team that qualified Ghana to its maiden World Cup in 2006 in Germany. When we return from this break, I'll introduce my guest, ask him what he's been up to since he left the far front of football administration at the Ghana Football Association. Stay with us, we are back after the break. You're welcome back from the break. Today, my guest is Mr. Fred Pappoe, affectionately called Pappoe. He is the former vice president of the Ghana Football Association, and in these turbulent times where the current FA president and his vice have been at loggerheads and has led to the dismissal of Mr. George Friye, if there's any person who knows the inner workings of the FA, it is my guest, Mr. Fred Pappoe. Mr. Fred Pappoe, you're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Daniel.
What have you been up to since you left the Ghana Football Association?
I've been around. I've been with Ghana football since then, spending quite a lot of time with my team, Great Olympics, and then also more as a spectator watching games here and there, Division 2, Colts, sometimes women's football, enjoying football generally with less pressure. So it's not been a total absence, but I've been around.
But have you heard when people say there was a point in time where you were so powerful in terms of the administration of Ghana football? It must be different seeing that now you have taken a more backseat role, if I should put it that way.
Powerful? Oh, that's interesting. Of course, my powers definitely at the time was limited by our regulations, and they were also limited by my office. I was a vice president. I was a vice to a president. So definitely, I don't think, I only pray and hope that I never abused whatever power people said I had. But I don't really remember. I just believe I functioned within the limits of the powers that had been ascribed me.
They say you have become more liberal since you left the FA, and that at the peak of your powers, you were quote-unquote very arrogant. Did you hear those
That's what people
sentiments?
say, but they still say it. I don't think I've changed.
Were you arrogant?
I wasn't. That's the perception people have. If you look at somebody from a distance and you choose to form an opinion, that's your own problem. If you get close to the person, and I'm sure those who got close to me, or those who are close to me, or those who even had the slightest opportunity of interacting with me will not go back with that notion. It's totally untrue.
Okay. You are now with Accra Great Olympics, and recently Accra Great Olympics had taken on the Ghana Football Association because of the way and manner it was demoted. Where are we on that legal case?
Well, we are still in court, like we did indicate. I think our legal team, a very strong one, still dedicated and working hard, are still in court. I met one of them, was it yesterday or the day before. He indicated they were in court sometime last week, where they went on the case that the FA had filed against Olympics. I think something to do with some processes when the case was at the peak. It was adjourned because the judge was indisposed or something. We're definitely still in court. The case is not over. So
Great Olympics still believe they have a chance of playing in the elite division?
It's not a matter of we believing. That's sometimes a bit of a misnomer. What we are saying had nothing to do with we playing in the elite division or Division 1 or Division 2. We are saying we felt there was a case that the FA had to apply its rules and regulations to. We are not looking at the step 2. We are looking at the step 1, the application of the rules and regulations. That's all we've been praying the court for, and we're still doing that.
Is it true that management of Olympics pushed for an expansion of the league?
We never pushed for an expansion of the league. Once again, these are some of the very unfortunate things that come up in our game, and unfortunately people swallow it without spending a bit of time and effort to reason around things. We were invited to a hearing by the GFA to find ways of solving the problem.
Okay.
We went in there thinking the FA had a buffet of options to bring up for us to discuss. We went in and immediately they threw a case to us, the issue to us, so what do we think should be done? That was the first in the beginning of this. So spokesman obviously was taken aback by that and was saying that, well, we believe we have a case. Go into the case, apply your rules and go into if you go into the case, it's possible it could turn up that we would have to be in the league. But realizing that you, as an FA, might have difficulties demoting the one that we think you should demote.
Okay.
If that be the case, then come up with a situation where all of us will be accommodated in the league. That was the thinking. We didn't go in there going to play with them cap in hand, like they always try to spin issues around.
Okay. Your legal case with the FA has led to the life ban of the referee who was at the center of it all, Mr. Lethbridge. I'm sure at management level, do you think, I mean, that was a sanction that you expected? I mean, has he become a victim of circumstances?
A rather poor victim of circumstances. A rather lame scapegoat. He's become the victim of irresponsible leadership or irresponsibility. Because what is it? He is alleged to have presented a report 7 months after the time to correct another report. Now, if you go into the intricacies of the matter, in his statement, he indicated that his attention had been drawn to. Who drew his attention to it? Now, when he brought this report to correct the one written 7 months earlier, that report went to a body, which body did not see anything wrong with the report filed 7 months after the period. And they went ahead to use the report to, as it were, exonerate some players that we had indicated were not qualified to have played in those matches. Now, our point then was that if you've used the report to correct or to free or exonerate those two players, that same rewritten or resubmitted report implicated some other players too, who, upon checking of the records, were not supposed to have played in those matches. So once you have accepted the report as something authentic to trigger your actions, then give us the chance to also ask you to rely on that same report to punish those two new players who were mentioning that. They said they will not agree to that. That was why we went to court. Now, that's one side of the case. If you, the disciplinary committee, you recognize that that report was valid enough, was powerful and potent enough, authentic enough for you to use that to free those two players, why then do you come back and punish somebody for having written that report? You, the same body.
Yeah.
It's most unfair. I feel very sad for Mr. Lethbridge. I would have felt the same way for any other person at all.
Is Great Olympics been victimized because of people like you who many say have fallen out of the leadership of the Football Association?
Well, it's difficult to make these kind of assertions without very clear parameters. It's very easy for people to think that way, but I am still yet to be convinced, because the weaknesses that I see Olympics falling victim to are weaknesses that were there even before whatever falling out occurred. Talking about bad officiating, talking about hooliganism and all those kind of things. They are not new. They didn't start because I ceased to be a vice president of the FA or whatever it is.
Okay. You're still here on Sports Check on Ghana Web TV with me, Daniel Ojo. Today, my guest is Mr. Fred Pappoe, former vice president of the Ghana Football Association. And we've been discussing the legal case between Accra Great Olympics and the Ghana Football Association, and which is still in court, by the way. Mr. Fred Pappoe, let's explore a bit of your time at the Football Association. Do you think things have changed since you left the vice presidential role? I mean, in terms of the setup and how things are done, in terms of how people are able to proffer alternatives to the leadership, the president. Many have said the people around Mr. Nyantichi now have SICO Fund, rubber stamp, executive committee, emergency committee. Was that the same during your era?
Well, that would be most unfair to your viewers for me to assess myself. But then I think if you're using the quality of decisions that come up from the leadership as a parameter, then it's fair to say things have changed a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you're looking at some of the decisions, some of the actions, some of the inactions that have been taken, like this recent spate of very highly questionable judicial body decisions, disciplinary committee, appeals committee, being challenged left, right, and center. If you're looking at questions that come up in terms of transparency regarding sponsorship packages, if you're looking at issues hanging around the convenience of even some arrangements of our league, like these double headers and things like that, you can give all the kind of excuses or justifications you can give for that. The bottom line is that it's not the best for our game. Come 2-3 years time, people will start complaining about the Pappoe Sports Stadium that is being overutilized.
Yeah.
You know, if you are playing, let's say you are a poor fan somewhere in Sogakope, you go and watch, excuse me to say, Wafa Great Olympics, Wafa Sporting Miren, or Wafa Accra Stars, or whatever it is. And then one day the big guys are coming, Wafa is coming to play Kotoko, and then Wafa is told to go and play in Cape Coast. Yeah. These kills are given.
But they say it's the clubs who admitted to this arrangement.
I have not finished.
Okay.
I have not finished. What's the level of democracy or discussions that we have in our game or around our game? What's the environment around our game? Are people able to freely speak their mind? Are people able to stand up against some decisions that they've been told to go along with?
But why can't they? These are grown men, these are people who are in charge of...
That's what I'm saying, the environment.
Okay.
The environment in which they operate. You see that the decisions that come up are not subjected to the right quality and test of debates and discussions for refinement before they come out. But like something is just thrown up, hook, line, and sinker, and then off they go. Hook, line, and sinker, off they go, you know. And then later you see them grumbling here and there. I'm sure you're a journalist. You hear them speak, but when you guys also hear them speak, you keep quiet. You are not bold enough to come and say, look at Fred Pappoe sitting there, today going to play at Bechem or whatever it is. But when they meet you, you will be complaining about. Mention names, name and shame. That's the way our game will grow. And
so, are you suggesting that the environment is so hostile, they are unable to freely come up with their own initiative and ideas and challenge what has been thrown at them?
As to whether, I cannot say that the environment is so hostile, but I'll say the environment is not enabling to challenge people to come out. There's a reason why football is a game we all follow. Look at you, you are a journalist, you have your TV crew, there are 10 persons, you go out there to the training grounds and you see fishermen sitting there, there's a banker who is driving to come and watch training or watch Olympics. We all mix and we do football. So there's a wealth of experience and knowledge around the whole of football that we do ourselves a lot of harm if we don't create the right environment for people to bring out all these viewpoints. Okay. It's so interesting when you listen to people like Alhaji Gusa talk about football. Huge sense. You go to the other extreme, you're talking about medical doctors, professors, the late Professor Mansi Dake, Professor Joshua Alabi, and then when they're also talking, great sense. So this is one game which is unique in terms of the following. We must do our best to make sure we benefit from all this myriad of expertise and knowledge and backgrounds.
I'll tell you something interesting I heard, that today Mr. Fred Pappoe and the likes of Mr. Randy Abe are criticizing Kwesi Nyantakyi, but the likes of Mr. Fred Pappoe created the personality of Mr. Kwesi Nyantakyi as we have it today. People blame you for what Mr. Nyantakyi has become in this last few years. They say when you were there, you protected him, you behaved in the same way these people are behaving.
In which way?
Can
you give me one specific example? I'm not saying you said it.
Yes.
But I hear some of these things, and as usual, there are some of the arguments that are thrown out there to, as it were, dissuade people from talking. But if you could mention just one example that happened when we were there, and we kept quiet, and the similar thing is being repeated now, then I'll concede. There is not a single one that you can mention. Mind you, the same people who are saying that, you will get people who will tell you that because some of us stood up to certain things, we did not come out because we stood out against it. We stood up against them. That is why we didn't gain favor and we found our way out.
You're saying that your candid nature facilitated your exit from the Ghana
Of course, if there are people who are intolerant, people who cannot, they are intolerant, people who cannot stomach divergent views, definitely if you are there, they'll want you out. Take pains to talk to some of the people who were there and are still there now. Push them to the point of being candid and they will tell you what substance we were made of when we were there. I won an election onto the executive committee.
Okay.
I had one of the highest number of votes that a Division 1 rep had, 41 out of 48.
Okay.
In the history of Ghana football elections.
Okay.
Yes. So
and it was that same election that.
And that same election, after we went to the executive committee then had to vote for emergency committee and vice president.
Okay.
It wasn't the president appointing like we do have now.
Okay.
So at that election, I lost to Jordan. The late Jordan is very sweet, gentle, so rest in peace.
Okay.
That was, so I was never voted out of the executive committee. And then in 2015, when I had the opportunity again to go and recontest for the executive committee, I said no, I had had enough.
Okay. So, why were you voted out of the vice presidential role if you think you distinguished yourself so well?
It's up to the voters, the electoral college. Maybe they didn't want people who distinguish themselves well. Maybe they didn't want it at the time. So I took it honorably, and then I just sat on the executive committee like others had voted me onto, and left the vice presidency seat to have my peace.
Was that election influenced?
I don't know.
You don't suspect?
I don't care. I wouldn't care to think about whether it was influenced or not. We are dealing with adults.
Okay.
Adults take decisions for whatever reasons they want. Whether they were influenced, whether they were scared, whether they used their conscience, whether they used their own solid, sound judgment, fine. The bottom line is that the generality of them didn't want me. They wanted Jordan Anaglo, and I wished him well. Yeah.
Do you have bad blood between you and Mr. Kwesi Nyantakyi, who was one time your very good friend?
Bad blood because of football. I must be a very cheap person to do that. Football is only football. At the end of the day, football is fun.
But you're not as close as you used to be.
Why do people say that? I was then his vice president. I was then the vice president of the FA, even when I was an executive committee member. So by virtue of that responsibility, I had to make myself present at the FA a certain number of times. In the day, in the week, in the month, I had to attend to meetings, I had to go look at letters, I had to chair committees, I had to do work at the FA. He also had to do same. So definitely, our responsibilities were bringing us together.
So it wasn't that you were friends?
We were colleagues. We don't need to be friends to work. You can work without being friends. Once the work is being done, that's fine. But friends as in friends like body, you pick up your phone midnight, you call, you chat, no. This is just football, my brother. We have other more serious lives outside football.
In your era, the Black Stars was the golden years of the Black Stars in terms of qualifying to the World Cup, in terms of paying very good bonuses between the years of 2005 and 2010 when we went to that World Cup. What has changed with the Black Stars? We didn't qualify for the World Cup and we're almost rebuilding a new team. What has happened with the Black Stars? You were a Black Stars Management Committee chairman at some point.
Yeah, I think I was a chairman from 2005 to sometime in 2011, about 6 years continuously.
Yeah, and those periods were very good periods. We went to 2 World Cups, did very well.
Yeah, I think I had a very good team, a very good management team to work with. And we had very good working relationships in the FA with the president of the FA, and then my colleagues on the emergency committee and the executive committee as well. It was teamwork, collective teamwork, openness, frankness. People were encouraged to speak their minds. People were encouraged to disagree. It didn't matter who you were disagreeing with. And in all these things, I'm quick to also mention that the favor of God was on our side. So definitely there's a change. You could clearly see if you're looking at even the performance and the standards and where the team is ranked and those kind of things. It's a bit problematic. It's unfortunate. But then also, I was just thinking of something. There was a time that if you were just watching the Champions League, you will see at least up to the final stage, you will see about not less than 3 or 4 Ghanaian players playing. Michael Essien, Sule Muntari, John Mensah, Pedro Asamoah, Sami Kufo and the rest, But look at this time. But for this young man, Thomas Partey, who played in the semi-final yesterday, at what level did you last see a Ghanaian player? You get me? All these things are very clear indicators and parameters. If you look at Nigeria, if you look at Cote d'Ivoire, if you look at Senegal, you see their players playing at a certain level. So that clearly tells you why they are going to the World Cup. So from the at the player stage, you know, in terms of quality, the quality of our players, in terms of the clubs they play for and the rest, is going down.
Okay.
That will always affect the stock that we have for the Black Stars. If you come to our local league, you have the situation where we have our local players going to play in some countries with all due respect and the rest, which will not inure so much to the benefit of a national team when you are building. In 2006, we had about 5 local players in the team that went to the World Cup finals. Jojo, Samia J, Dankwe, Sheila Iliasu, the central defender, and then Habib, about 5. I think in 2010 there were about 2 or 3. But now, if you're seriously looking at the Black Stars, even for their qualifying matches, how many local players could you clearly see in their play?
So it wasn't because we were paying bribes like Mr. The former Minister of Sports, Neil Antevanapo, suggested. It wasn't because we were paying bribes during your era to referees to influence our games.
Did you see the effect of a bribe referee when Black Stars played South Africa in Johannesburg on the 5th of June 2005, where we beat them 2-0? You saw the referee had been bribed. Did you even suspect that for a second? When we went to Congo to go and draw with them, for the first time, they lost points at home in about 15 years. I'm sure you watched those games. Yes. Did you see the hand of a referee?
I wouldn't know, Mr. Fred.
No, if a referee, you all know, Ghanaians, you're always talking about referees who have been bribed. You stone them, you beat them, you do whatever it is to them. It starts from a certain point you perceive that the man is not being fair. And I'm asking you that in all those matches, did you get the slightest inclination that the Black Stars was not doing well, but the referee was assisting them? And then we proceeded to go to the World Cup, to go and beat the Czech Republic, to go and beat the United States of America by bribing the referees. Come on.
Okay. Now, this Congress that gave the powers to the FA president to appoint his vice instead of an election, you think it's, with the benefit of hindsight, it was a wrong move?
With the benefit of hindsight, definitely, in every sense of the word, it was a wrong move. With the benefit of hindsight, like you are saying, you know, and nothing should prevent us from having a real look at it. I think it was a wrong move. It gives too much power to whoever is the president.
Are you sorry for Mr. George Afriyie? With all the things that have happened, his removal from the Black Stars Management Committee chairmanship, and then a few days later his outright removal as vice president of the Football Association?
Well, I think as a person, of course, I'll feel sorry for him for having lost those positions, especially if he wasn't prepared or ready for it. But sometimes I tend to believe maybe he was also waiting for these things to happen for a purpose. Sometimes I'm inclined to believe that way, that he wanted them to sack him. And then he will know them for who they are, maybe for whatever reason, you know. So as a person, I feel sorry, but I also think that maybe he was also waiting for it. That's why.
Did he, the announcement of his candidature, was it too early, like people have said?
No, too early compared to what? If you say too early or too little or too late or too big, that means you must have a point of reference. I think it didn't flout any law. There are no rules and regulations which stipulates when you could make a pronouncement and when you could not make a pronouncement. So it didn't flout any law.
If a president has had 4 vice presidents, is it a problem? Does it speak to the personality of the head, that he's intolerant, that he's unable to work with someone for a prolonged period of time?
You know, I think I wouldn't want to go into what that says in terms of the personality of the president, but I believe the president will be losing the benefit of somebody who has continuity, somebody who has benefited from sitting on the seat for quite some time, learn the ropes, learn the style, learn his ways, and those kind of things. And then he himself would also have learned the ways of the person. I believe he knew my work ethics, he knows George Afriyie's work ethics, he knows Crenzel. If one person is there for a long time, you get to know all those kind of things. Whatever rough edges would have been cleared long ago, maybe after half a year, 1 year into the tenure, you will be able to know each other, size each other, and then you know how to get the best out. So I'm sure he's losing the benefit of those things.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you the final 2 questions. But first, What sort of person is Mr. Nyantakyi? You know him better than I do because you worked with him a full term. What sort of person is he? Is he egoistic? Is he someone who wants his ego to be found by the people he works with? Is he autocratic, a dictator?
You're using strong words, right? I can tell you about the Mr. Nyantakyi I knew,
okay,
and the Nyantakyi I worked with.
Okay.
The current day Nyantakyi, I cannot say it because I do not know that closely.
Okay.
I'm just saying it from afar. The Nyantakyi I knew, the Kwesi Nyantakyi I knew, one was, I would not say is because that was in the past. He was a very hardworking person.
Okay.
Very, very committed. He was devoted to the work. Whatever assignment he was given, he would devote his full time, his fullest energy, his everything to the assignment to make sure he gets the best out of it. The only thing I can say about that and then relate it to now is that from what I knew in terms of his work attitude during those times, and then the present portfolio that he's carrying, I know he would have difficulties.
So he has to relinquish some of the portfolios he has?
For good measure, I think if he does a very good and dispassionate introspection, I'm sure if he does it openly and with all his sincerest of hearts, I'm sure he might come to the conclusion that he would have to give up some.
Okay. Let's talk about your personal ambition. What are you hoping to achieve in the next couple of years in terms of climbing the ladder and becoming a president? Many have mentioned your name, George Efriye Keto-Kreku, as the potential candidate for next year's election. Are you thinking about contesting next year's election?
Well, it's a question I've been asked. You get asked this question about 10 times a day, and I still give the same answer. I'll be telling a lie if I said I'm not considering it. I'm considering it because a lot of people have made so many representations to me.
Okay.
I believe we all owe it to our game and to the followers of our game, both closely and far, to salvage the game. If some of us can contribute towards that, why not? We cannot sit back and allow the game to slide down.
Do you have a fair idea of the kind of changes you want to bring if you decide to contest and if you are, God willing, granted?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
What are they?
I won't mention them now. But whatever it is, I think I'll be
This is an avenue to start your campaign, you know.
Yeah, but I haven't started my campaign. So, but definitely there are a whole lot of areas which require change. We've mentioned a lot of them. The starting point, the whole starting point is that we should try to repair a certain culture of sycophancy and lack of openness and truthfulness at the top hierarchy of our game.
You need a big, deep pockets to run a campaign. I'm sure you are privy to that and you're preparing for that.
If you want to run a campaign the way it's run, in the usual, as it were, typical, how do I call it, monetized way, then of course you need a deep pocket. But I wonder whether that's the way I'll go if I decide to start.
Okay. Thank you very much. We hope to speak with you again when you make up your mind to contest.
Okay, maybe I might use your platform to announce it instead of a birthday bash like my good friend George Efriye did.
Exactly, and we'll be available for you. My guest today has been Mr. Fred Pappoe, former Vice President of the Ghana Football Association, and he's fondly remembered for his role in Ghana's first qualification to the FIFA World Cup